Today, we are going to have a real in-depth conversation. My guest today, this is their first time sharing their story. This is their truth. This is their story. So I want to put a trigger warning before we start. We are talking about severe mental health. We're going to be talking about some self-harm as well.
I think touching on what you said there about upsetting other people, a lot of the time when we're not really aware of how we're feeling, we can project things onto other people, and it's not malicious. But as you grow up, you realise that I might have done and said this, and it's not an excuse, but it's because I was going through something genuinely. So I'm going to forgive myself for that because I wasn't in control.
Welcome to the Prime Life Project podcast, a place to help you unlock your full potential, both mentally and physically, to become the best version of you. Welcome back to another episode of the Prime Life Project podcast. I'm your host, Daniel James, and today I've got a very special guest in person. It's someone I've known for a while, it's someone I've got a lot of respect for, and it's someone I want to bring onto the podcast to share their story because she's been through a lot, and she's very open and honest about sharing her story when it comes to mental health. And for me, it's all well and good for me to get these experts coming on and talking about all this high-end stuff, but for me, it's also really important for me to bring on guests that are relatable to people, and this is one of the realest people I've ever met. She's absolutely awesome, so I'm really delighted to have her on the podcast. One thing I'm going to say is, though, there's some areas that we're basically going to sort of skirt over for various reasons. So if you're worrying about my interviewing skills, thinking, Dan, you should go into more detail about certain stuff, just know there's method to the madness. So just trust me, and we're going to go where we go with it. So Annie, why don't you just introduce yourself to my audience, a bit about what you do.
Hey, I'm Annie. I'm an online coach, personal trainer, and yeah, I like to bodybuild.
Yeah. And that's how I first got talking to each other. That was like going to the gym originally. So we first started talking. And like I said, obviously you kind of knew about my background with mental health and stuff like that. So that's also how we kind of related as well. So I just want to go straight into a story. I just want to go straight into this because I said there's so many paths we can go down, but we've discussed this off air, so we know roughly where we're sort of going structure with this. Now, we're not going too much into your childhood, but you said something really interesting when we were talking off air, and I just want to quote you on this. You said, as kids, you had everything you wanted, but nothing of what you needed. And that was such a powerful quote. I think a lot of people can relate to this. So can you just talk a bit about that and what you sort of meant by that?
I think when you're growing up, your parents want to give you everything that looks good and everything they think you need, but it's stuff kids want. It's material, it's objects. What your kids want is you as a parent, your time, your patience, your understanding, God, and just a bit of love. There's a huge difference between material and kind of the emotion from your parent. There's a huge difference between that. So yeah, you can have everything you want, but if you're lacking that bit of love, it's not what you need. Because
I'm not going through detail, but let's say you didn't want for anything, let's put it that way, like your parents were very well off growing up. So that's why you sort of said this, like material-wise, you pretty much had everything you wanted. But actually, if you go further down your story, the thing you actually needed was that sort of like emotional support. And I think parents can get very confused when they confuse love with, oh, they want this, when actually what love really is.
There'd be times we'd get back from school and there'd just be a new this and a new that because it's what your parents think, oh, this is keeping them happy. It's not. It's just keeping us occupied as kids. When that stuff's not there and you're growing up, it's bedtime. You're sat there with nothing and no one. It's like, oh, actually, maybe I just want to be around my parents. You know what I mean?
Because you're quite aware as a kid as well, weren't you? Like,
extremely.
Were you in your own head quite a bit, like aware of that voice? Were you talk, like self-talking quite a lot?
Yeah, I was an extreme overthinker as well from like a very young age. So I'd just sit there like going over and over and over on things.
Was that a bad thing?
Yes.
Why?
Well,
because it's interesting, because I don't think parents quite realise, and this is the thing now, is that mental health's become more of a thing, people understand it, but I don't think parents quite realise at what age kids can actually start to free think for themselves and get inside their own heads. Because obviously, like the physical body, they're small, quote unquote, kids, but actually they can be really inside their own head and self-analysing things. Which that's the reason why I sort of said that, because parents don't quite realise that because it's not something that's spoken about of our parents' generation. Yeah, our parents, there was no such thing really as mental health. No, it wasn't a thing, but nowadays it is, and people don't kind of put the two together.
Yeah, I think our parents struggled to understand nowadays because it is such an open topic. Like in regards to neglection as a child, a lot of the time it's because your parents weren't shown that love either. It's not actually their fault. They're not ignorant. They've been victim to the same kind of behaviour, so that's how they raise their kids. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the way that I've learned this is that obviously the parents are doing the best they can, and when you've got parents that come from a troubled background, they will either repeat the same patterns or they'll do the exact opposite, literally the exact like polar opposites. And it's normally through chance rather than choice that it happens to be that way.
Yeah.
Because like I said, parents think whatever they're doing, they think that constitutes as love, but that's their version of love and in their own bubble. And obviously kids can't relate to that. We've spoken a lot about that, about some stuff has happened, but now as an adult, you can kind of look back and be like, I see it now, but actually at the time, you didn't, because like you had a very, very unsettled upbringing, and you sort of also mentioned about that led you to become a bit of a people pleaser as well. So obviously it's an interesting thing because we spoke to Dave Langsdale and he mentioned about being a people pleaser as well.
Yeah,
so
I watched his after we spoke actually.
Yeah, it's like you mentioned about the people pleasing. So as soon as you said that, I was like, well, this is interesting. So talk to me about that, because that's something, again, I think there's a lot of traits in that. I'm not saying it's just women, but you see a lot more women growing up to be people pleasers than boys. I'm not going to go into why that potentially is, but can you talk to me about how that kind of manifests in your life?
For me, it was the people raising you is what society say are the people who are meant to keep you safe, the people who are meant to bring you up and keep you happy and show you all this love. And when you're not receiving that and you don't have that safety net, you don't feel safe, it's like, I must be doing something wrong, so I need to do everything that's possible for mum and dad to smile, or for my sister or my brother to like me and want to hang out with me. And that's where it stemmed from. I had two sisters who were twins growing up, and then two brothers. They got on, do boy stuff. The twins did their stuff. I was a bit isolated. So my people pleasing started from a really young age, just wanting to be involved or want a bit of, affection or time off your parents and stuff. And when you're not feeling that, it's like, what can I do to make you happy?
And like, you're not giving it to me because I'm doing something. That's a real key thing, that I must be doing something wrong. I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah.
Like, even like now as adults, like whenever something doesn't quite go their way, what have I done wrong?
Yeah. Or even the slightest change of tone of voice. Oh my God, I've upset this person. You haven't. They're just...
And even what I say as well, it's like, you can't control people's emotions, that's their emotions. So it's like, for me, it's like, you can't control how other people feel, like that's a them problem.
Yeah.
So if you say something and they change, they've got some stuff they need to sort of work on and go through. Because I've had it before where I've delivered workshops talking to adults, and I'm talking to adults about the impact I have on kids, and some of the adults are getting emotional in the room, and I'm thinking, what have I done wrong? But I know I haven't done anything. It's like they've got some stuff there that they need to kind of address. But as kids, we don't know that. And isn't it interesting how, sort of like I said there, because I didn't realise you had two twin sisters. I didn't know how many siblings you got. And this thing, so when I learned Annie's story, because obviously I needed to get a lot of background information, I deliberately didn't go into too much information because I like to keep it a bit raw, but I didn't realise you had that many siblings.
Yeah,
so where were you in that? Are you the eldest?
I'm the youngest, yeah. Youngest? So because I'm last, it was still more like isolated.
Did your brothers and sisters, did they have the same, when you mentioned about having everything, nothing what they needed, did your siblings have more emotional support than you, would you say? Or was it all the same throughout?
I'd say we all received the same amount of everything, to be honest. Yeah.
So we spoke about this before when it comes to emotions. You were emotionally unavailable, probably an understatement. Can you talk to me about your emotions growing
what emotions?
Yeah. So because this is basically where the story starts. Like this work, because again, we don't want to spend too much time in these early days, but this is fundamentally where your issue started with this whole emotional suppression. Can you remember actually consciously doing that? Can you talk to me about your emotions there? Because again, we're not going to talk about it, but you've been through some trauma as well. So you had a lot of chaos, you had a lot of unrest growing up, and trauma. Now we're talking about real trauma here, because people like to use the trauma card. We're talking about real trauma. We're not going to it. Real trauma. Can you talk to me about whether you did it consciously or unconsciously, about your emotions actually shutting down and you kind of suppressing them?
I think it was unconscious, if I'm honest. From a young age, you do something continuously, it becomes a habit. Well, you do that from a young age for years and it just becomes who you are. Sometimes I say to Georgia, like, anyone who knew me before I was 20 years old never actually knew me. I wasn't my own person. My emotions and stuff weren't regulated. Like, it just, everything was a bit fucked up.
Yeah. How did it manifest? You said you were quite angry. Can you give some examples of like this anger? Because I think that's the biggest thing for me. So on my journey, because I had the same sort of nowhere near the trauma you had. I didn't have any trauma, to be honest, at all. But I had complete lack of emotional awareness and emotional intelligence. So for me, whenever I felt something, it came out as anger. So I was very, very angry. Can you sort of, you've got any examples of like where that sort of manifests in your life?
I think growing up, I would be angry at the fact that I couldn't always make people happy. Sometimes I couldn't hang out with my brothers and sisters because they didn't want to. What's wrong with me? Growing up, you learn as you get older, it's just because you're young and they're too cool for you. Then that's fine.
No one's hanging out with a little,
you know
little,
what I mean?
little brother or sister, yeah.
They're like, my friends are here, like, go away.
Yeah.
So I think growing up, like, we need to repeat the question again. Sorry.
I was saying about how did anger manifest? Like, was there anything like you can remember off the top of your head where, like at school or anything like that, where you were like just playing up?
Yeah, men.
Men? That's interesting. Talk about that because I don't know this.
Older men to do with sexual assault growing up.
Yeah.
Men at school, older men specifically, I'd find it very hard to be in their classes, and I acted up. And I'd be riled up. I'd just be angry. And it wasn't them. It's one person's done something, so you must all be the same. And I honestly I wasn't nice. I'd tell male teachers to fuck off, to shut up, I don't want to be in your class. They never knew why. They literally just thought I was a bit of an arsehole.
Yeah.
But internally, even I didn't know at the time, it was a bit unconscious. It's, you all make me uncomfortable and I don't want to be here.
It's that uncomfortableness you didn't understand. You didn't understand why you were uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then sort of came out as that. And this is the reason I want to basically talk about this before we go into the main stuff, is because there'll be a lot of parents listening to this and they've got kids. And again, we're talking here like, I don't know, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And they're acting up in a certain way. And the parents don't understand why.
There's usually a reason. And if some parents take the time, instead of thinking, my child's been so naughty at school, you need grounding, sit down with them and have a conversation and just ask why. Even the simple, are you okay? Or is there a reason you're acting like this? And you might actually get a genuine answer, not just, oh, I'm just being naughty for the fun of it.
I think it's also not making it about themselves, because a lot of parents take it personally. Like, what have I done? What have I done?
You've embarrassed me at school.
And it's got nothing to do
Sorry.
with them. Yeah, exactly. There's like, I'm feeling this stuff. What do you mean I've embarrassed you? Like, I don't even know what's going on right now. So I think that the key thing there, like I said, is have to create that safe space of like, actually, what's going on. I think it's a really important thing to do, because that's what I want to sort of just touch on this, because like I said, it sort of flows into what we're going to talk about in a minute. But actually, you mentioned how you were so angry and you basically had this kind of emotional dysregulation and you were playing up at school. Like, you weren't a naughty kid. And again, things differentiating the world between the kid and the behaviour. Yeah. Like, the child is not their behaviour. Their behaviour normally, as you said, is because of a result of something. And it could be, again, nothing's happened, but actually what they've done is they've got inside their own head, as you sort of mentioned before. They keep overthinking something, like maybe someone at school has called them fat or something like that. And they just sat there replaying it and they're bullying themselves in their head. So it's not necessarily the kid's gone through some trauma. It may simply be a fact of they're bullying themselves because someone's made a comment and now they're just sat there replaying it over again constantly.
Yeah. I think sometimes as well, I was angry at other kids as well, because once my parents divorced, when you're told like, your father hates you, he wants nothing to do with you, he left you, remember you're by yourself, and you're being, some people might say brainwashed, for years you're being told this, and you kind of think, oh, like, if my father can do this, like, I don't mind having friends, but we can't get too close. So it'd get to a point where I don't want you to leave, so I'm just going to be an asshole so that we don't have that friendship. Does that make sense?
So you're not letting people get too close?
Yeah, defense mechanism was, I don't want to be friends with you because this happened, so I'm just going to be an ass and end that friendship.
Before it even begins?
Yeah.
Was there like a massive abandonment issues?
It would have been, yeah, for sure. Nowadays, I couldn't care less. But when you're growing up and that's kind of happened, you use it as a defense mechanism, I think. Just anger and aggressiveness, maybe.
Push people away. So that people don't get too close. Interesting with this, again, not actually this. Did this affect your relationships, like sexual relationships with people growing up? Like,
fun fact, George is my first relationship.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
My current fiance.
I didn't know that.
There was obviously, you're younger, you're having a good text and you're looking through Tinder or Bumble, whatever it is. There was times like there'd be people you go and see and you mess around with and stuff, but I'd never want to be in a relationship just because of what happened during my parents' divorce and how like volatile it was. I never wanted to get married, never wanted someone who might do all of that. But I mean, growth, look at me now. So,
but that's the difference, isn't it? It's like, and that's why I wanted you to come on here, because like I said, we're talking about some real serious mental health stuff in a second, and again, some real trauma, which we've kind of not going to go into too much detail on. But for you to actually be the person that you are now and have this real functioning life you've got is really powerful, because that's one of the main things we want to get out of this, is about the stereotype of mental health. Yeah. About basically the fact that if you're diagnosed with depression or anxiety or something like that, that there's basically a stereotype around that, and how people kind of play up to it almost, and they think that, oh, I'm depressed, I've got to be this certain way. So can you talk about this? Because one of the main things you want to talk about, I think it's fascinating. I've not really had anyone talk about it before.
Yeah, it's something I don't think people talk about because we live in a very sensitive society. I still need to be careful how I word things, but when you think of a depressed person, what do you think of?
Shoulders down, head down, miserable, moody.
Quiet room, dark, just can't even be bothered. Why do we do that? That's how society said it is. So when someone says, doctor said to me at 13, yeah, like your child is severely depressed, like take this, this and this, you'll be better. It was, oh, okay, I can mess around now at school, I can miss some classes, I can stay at home and, I can just sit in the room and feel sorry for myself. I need to be careful how I'm wording this, obviously, and I did. I sat and felt sorry for myself for years, from a young age. But looking at it as an adult, that's not what I needed to do. I still could have been more productive and go and play out and actually have friendships and stuff like that. I still had friendships, like lads I used to go play football with and stuff. But from a young age, when the mental health was labelled, it was, I need to act this type of way because this is what it is. Does that make sense?
I think it's even worse nowadays with TikTok and people self-diagnosing themselves with, I've got anxiety and depression. It's like, no, you're just having a bad day. That's not depression.
Your coffee was too strong this morning. That's why you're anxious.
Yes, it's like, it's not even that. You get girls that, again, as young as 15, 16, smashing fat burners, which are basically caffeine tablets, and then having coffee. And it's like, that's why you're anxious. And you're not even necessarily anxious. You're just feeling, you're feeling anxious. You don't have anxiety. It's a real key thing. Or people talking about, I've got ADHD. No, you literally just can't concentrate because you're on your phone constantly. Like, there's nothing, like, you don't have ADHD. Like, I went to a workshop, an actual seminar about ADHD from a neuroscientist, saying that to actually be diagnosed with ADHD, there are so many criteria you've got to meet. And it's not just one part of it. It's not just about concentration. There's all these other parts. And people just self-diagnosing themselves. And as you said, that straight away puts them in a box. Oh, I've got ADHD. So what? So you're not even going to try? Yeah. You're going to just act like a dick because you've got ADHD. What? Like that's not really how it works. It's almost like people use that as an excuse to not even try at life. It's like, I'm depressed, I can't try. What? Like,
we all know that one person. Oh, I've got ADHD and I'm just all over the place and.
Yeah, like time management is like one part of it. There's a whole host of other things.
Yeah.
Maybe just really bad. You don't check the time, or you don't actually structure your day properly. There's so many things to it. And again, it's like the same. I think it's really interesting because, again, when I was depressed, I was a functioning depressant. So people on the outside would not have known I was depressed.
Yeah.
No one had a clue. I literally put that mask on, went to work, did my job, came back, took the mask off, and that's when I was quote unquote depressed. But I think nowadays, as you said, you've got a lot of the younger generation where I'm depressed. That's it. They then put themselves into this category of you've got to be miserable. Your life's ruined.
Especially as a coach, you can probably relate. Sometimes it's like, so what can we do to help you? Oh, well, I'm just depressed and it's this and it's that. And it all leads back to, I have a diagnosis of depression or anxiety, so I can't go to the gym and I'm happy living like this. And you know what I'm getting at?
It's comfortable, yeah.
Yeah.
How helpful were doctors when you got diagnosed? So what were you just diagnosed with? Is it just depression you got officially diagnosed with? Or like, what did you get officially diagnosed with?
My official first diagnosis was depression. My second one was part of a bipolar disorder, like a mini thing. I'm not going to go into anything else, but because I was quite up and down, but my episodes were very, very long and intense. And from a young age, to be fair, like I'd I'd hear like, Annie,
Mm.
yeah, no one there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they weren't very helpful. Like free healthcare and that, it sounds great, but not when you're on a waiting list for mental health for 7 months. And by the time the 7 months come, you're like, oh, I actually feel a lot better. 2 weeks later, bang, straight into that depression. You're waiting longer and longer, you know?
Mm-hmm. Were you medicated for the depression? And
Yeah, actually, I was quite young and I was put on something beginning with C.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't know the name of it.
'Cause the only reason I asked that is at such a young age, I feel there's other methods to go down.
Yeah, I agree.
What's your thoughts on that?
I think looking back now, I despise the fact I was put on medication at such a young age because I hadn't even fully developed.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're 12, 13 years old even, there's so much more left to grow and to learn that you're feeling this and this is why, and no, just here's a pill, it'll stop. Thanks.
But it's not that. If someone had actually taken the time to listen to your story, it'd been very obvious what you were struggling with. PTSD for a start.
Yeah.
Like there was all these other things. It's like, well, actually, you can do something with that. Actually, even just talking to someone at a young age and just being like, you're not crazy. Actually, here's what's going on. Because again, to be diagnosed with depression at that age, I imagine there was quite a stigma behind that. For again, self-confidence wise for yourself.
Yeah,
to be labelled with that.
That's another reason I was very like, as much as I was like, oh, I don't want to go to school and stuff like this. When I did, I was very. You'd think I was a cheeky kid and. You know, living life, you know, smoke a bit of weed. No, it was all just kind of to mask the fact that, damn, I've got this thing wrong with me. This isn't right because no one speaks about this. No one else has got this. I'm only young, you know.
And that's the thing, at that age, you probably shouldn't even know what it is. Like, you should have been thinking, look at the everything that led up to it at that age. Do you mean it shouldn't have got to that stage anyway? And again, to have depression at 13, 14, 15, like, there's got to be something seriously wrong because kids shouldn't have to deal with the weight of that sort of stuff. And again, that's when we talk about real trauma. And I think nowadays the word trauma gets thrown around a lot.
I was first, do you know Muster's Medical Centre?
Yeah.
You know where it used to be back in the day?
Yeah, in the corner.
Yeah, the dentist.
Yeah.
I was originally taken there when I was 9 years old for the depression. Like, that's how far back it goes.
And who took you there?
My biological mum.
Yeah. And interesting. So again, like, rather than looking at themselves, there's something wrong with you. You need to be fixed.
There must be a reason you're acting like this.
Yeah, and it's a you problem, not a me problem. Again, we'll leave that there. I want to talk about something that, again, we've not really spoke about before. And again, we're going to kind of talk about it, but indirectly as well. And also to let you know there will be a trigger warning before this episode, so we can talk about it openly.
Extremely, yeah.
Yeah, so that will be recorded before the episode. Self-harm. It's something that we spoke about off air quite a bit. And even just now before we started about it. This is something that when I was talking to a close friend of mine, you're talking now 6-7 years ago, I asked outright like why she'd done it.
Yeah.
And I saw the scars, and she said it's the only way I could feel something. I don't think people fully understand why people self-harm. Can you explain from your personal experience? And again, I know there's different. You're sharing your truth, and that's it. It's just your truth. The reasons why you self-harmed and how that kind of helped you cope, because essentially that's all it is a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about that? Because I don't think people understand. Listen to this episode, unless you've actually met someone and had a conversation with someone, people don't know. They just see the marks on the arm or the leg or wherever it is, and they automatically create a story.
Yeah.
So can we go into detail about this, about for your stuff, so people can understand this, to kind of unpick that stigma, to give people another story?
Of course, yeah. Do you want to ask any specific questions?
That's a good point, actually. Why did you decide to do that? Like, was it something that had you seen it anywhere, seen anyone else? Like, what made you first think of doing that?
I think for me, it was, I don't know how I'm feeling. I literally had no idea what I was feeling. I had no feeling, if that makes sense. Sounds strange. I had all these feelings, but I couldn't feel.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know why that was happening. So, pain. Well, if I self-inflict it, I'm doing it. I know why it hurts. And I'm feeling something, and it doesn't just go away. It stings. It will sting for days. You'll get in the shower and it stings. You run hot water, stings. Wow, and I can cover this up. I was in control of that feeling, and it was something I knew it was there. So, yeah.
What level did it go to when it comes to pain? Because that's an interesting concept. Did it manifest in other areas of your life, or was it just purely from a like self-inflicted, like on your skin?
What do you mean?
So some people, when it comes to call themselves self-harm, they can get into fights, like they like the physical, like they get into fights like black eye, stuff like that, or they can go into drugs, they can go into alcohol, again, to feel stuff. Was yours just purely the physical sensation on your body?
No, I mean, the physical was when I'd be in control of it. Okay, I'm finally feeling something and I'm in control. This is fine. It would be really, it sounds sick. It was really calming. And unless you've done it, which I don't think you should, it's very hard to understand. But on top of that, like, I'd smoke a bit of weed, and at that age I actually started using the gym, East League Leisure Centre, you know which one?
Yeah.
So I was also feeling like your DOMS, like pain anyway.
Yeah.
So there was a few different ways I was doing it.
Yeah.
But mostly it was physical, like self-harm.
And I said again, I don't think anyone listening to this will think it's a smart thing to do, but it's just understanding, because people listening to this more than likely have got kids and they may be experiencing something like that, and they won't understand why they're doing it, and maybe the kid doesn't really understand why they're doing it, because maybe at the time you didn't fully understand, but now as an adult you can kind of articulate it. So just giving people that awareness and shining that light on it, being like, they're doing it to feel something.
Yeah.
Like they've got no other way of actually
Something's
feeling.
wrong. Like, whether you're doing it because you need to feel something, or you're doing it because, you know, as sad as it is, self-harm and stuff like this has actually become really popular online.
Yeah.
So it's never done for the right reason, but it's not always a reason to be doing it, if that makes sense.
If you could go back now with the brain and knowledge you've got now, how else would you have dealt with that lack of being able to feel?
Man, I would have gone and asked for some help.
Yeah. Where would you have gone to at that age? Because you couldn't turn to your parents. Where would you have gone? Because people might be listening to this and might be in the same situation you were in there.
That's the thing. At that age, especially like back then, sounds ages ago, we're not educated on what to do or where to go. You can ring Samaritan's number and stuff like that. I did that plenty of times, but there's someone on the phone saying, "Oh, it's okay. Like, it's fine." Now I'd, school counsellors or someone that you trust, adult-wise, not your mates. Just go and speak to them and tell them how you're feeling, even if you're not feeling.
I think that's a good thing when it comes to schools, because obviously I work in a lot of schools and they have got now a lot better at having someone to actually talk to, and they actually generally do care. That's their full-time job. Again, not necessarily a counsellor or therapist, but they can actually get you the actual support that you need in a bit of a safer space. I think it's a real key thing you sort of mentioned there, because like I say, kids, yes, we've got the social media and all that sort of stuff, but they still don't know where to turn.
Yeah.
I think you can't beat the physical face-to-face interaction, and it's not telling your mates, because again, that then causes a whole host of issues with kids gossiping and not understanding what gossip actually really is at that age and the impact that could have. So I think that's a real key thing.
Extreme impact.
The thing
is, you can go to your school counsellor, but if you're having parents at home, I learned that the first person they call is the parent at home. So for some people, it's actually quite hard to get that help, because I don't know how it is nowadays. They have to call your parents and say, "Look, like, this has been disclosed, what's going on?" And majority of the time you see your parent and you're in that room with this safe person, you see your parent and, "Oh yeah, it was all a lie," or "You don't want to speak." So I think it is quite hard for kids to get help, to be honest.
I think that there's the thing, I think nowadays, because mental health has become such a popular topic, and again, like I said earlier, on TikTok and stuff like that, it's very hard to distinguish who's genuinely struggling and who's trying to fit in with the latest trend, as you said, and people are genuinely crying out for help, and people that are actually doing it for attention. Because in my personal experience, again, it's not always the case at all. It's the ones that are shouting loudest that are actually the ones that don't necessarily need the help as the quiet ones. You need to be more careful of the ones that are suffering in silence, that don't say anything. They're the ones that really like slip under the radar, because the noisy people, like, they're just doing it for, again, not all of them for attention.
No, I agree.
But it's actually the ones that are quietly struggling. Like me, no one would have known I was struggling. I got to the stage where I could have just disappeared off this planet, and everyone would have been like, it was absolutely fine, there was nothing wrong with him.
Vice versa.
Exactly. And you see it with a lot of celebrities as well. Like, I saw him the day before and he was amazing, he was in a great headspace. And it's like, that's actually now, this is a nice little segue into, because that's what happened with you, wasn't it? Because the one thing you mentioned about was when you had this amazing day and we actually felt something. And that's for you, that kind of, again, we're not going into too much detail on this, but that for you is when you were like, I'm done now, actually. Like, I've experienced this nice sunny day, I'm kind of done. Can you talk a little bit about that, to where you feel comfortable, and then we'll move on?
Yeah. There was this day and I was trying to buy my siblings, and we were just out at this beer and sausage fest. Obviously, I don't eat sausage. But I was just enjoying it. Really nice day. We're in like one of the villages over Loughborough way. We're all just sat on this bench, minus one sibling. I was just looking around and I was like, wow, like this weight off my shoulders. I was like, I feel so peaceful and happy, and is something going on? Have I taken something? It was like this really euphoric kind of just genuine happiness. I was like, I'm content. I'm fine with this. Everyone's okay. Everyone's healthy. And I enjoy this feeling. I never want this feeling to leave. So yeah, I went with that.
And then, after we're going into too much detail, so obviously you made a decision. Thankfully, when you were in the middle of making a decision, text your sister basically got you the help, woke up in hospital.
Yeah,
and
I was scared.
Yeah, like, we're not going to go into too much
Really
detail about that, because we had a conversation before off air about that, so we're not going to go into too much detail. But the consequences of that were that you ended up then being sectioned, essentially. This is kind of what I want to talk about, because when people talk about stories in mental health, this is why I think you're such an amazing human, because you genuinely have had full-on mental health issues. Not this fake stuff. It's like you've actually kind of been to a place that most people don't recover from, and you have, and you're living now this great life. Like, you've got a fiance, like, it's amazing. People don't really understand the sort of struggles that people go through when they get those sort of depths. So can you talk to me, where you feel comfortable, about your time in those institutions?
Yeah, I'll say first, when you see these institutions on TikTok and all of that, don't believe what you see. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, worse.
Yeah.
I've never been. I literally don't. I'm not even seeing. I don't have TikTok, so I can't even. When you were telling me the story when we first spoke to me to get the data, because I said I need to see this conversation. I need to know where we're going with it. When you're describing it to me, I was like, I genuinely, in my head, I saw it as like an old school mental asylum. That's the pitch that I'm not saying it was that, but that's the picture that was in my head. So I don't even know what they are like. So again, if you could actually try and explain that, because I don't think people really, when people say you've been sectioned, I think people think it's like off Batman, like Arkham Asylum kind of style.
Yeah.
Like, what's it like?
Your freedom doesn't exist. You can't pee by yourself. I said to you, I couldn't change my tampon. I couldn't do anything without people watching me. I was on the highest section, so if I was to go missing, or I told you a couple of stories, police be on the lookout. Like, it's that deep. They don't want you anywhere that isn't in that hospital. You have no sense of safety, and it's actually quite scary, to be honest. You kind of sit there and think, I have no control over my life. I'm in this place. I don't know what I'm feeling and thinking. A lot of people in there, including me, they're putting all these different medications in you. So you're scared and you're just being watched. You can't go outside for fresh air. You can't feel the grass on your feet. Like, you're literally in a hospital ward being followed around. And you can go, we're similar in the sense that sometimes we just need a bit of time, bit of space, recharge. There's none of it.
Do you think that then makes it worse?
Yes. That pushed me over the edge a few times to relapse.
Because this is where, again, when we told me the story the first time, I was a bit like, because I've heard that once you're in, it's very hard to get out.
Depends what section you're on. That's why I mentioned the TikTok thing. So many Georgia showed me videos of people on TikTok. Oh, they're in hospital and they're in a psych ward, and I'm like, believe me when I say they wouldn't be posting on TikTok and this, that, and the other, and be posting what they're posting if they're that bad.
Yeah.
As bad as it sounds. When it comes to like really deep mental health illnesses and stuff, and really severe things that are going on within people, it's unimaginable, and I wouldn't wish it upon anyone.
How long were you in the severe category for?
About 6 months.
Yeah. And during that time, because you mentioned, again, you in your own head quite a lot, with all the medication that you were on, what was it like day to day? Like, were you, it sounds a bit hard to describe, like, was it like you were in a daydream, or were you very aware of what was kind of going on? Because
no, I wasn't aware. I had no...
almost like a zombie almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Genuinely, yeah.
So, because you've told me the story, don't go into detail about what happened with it, but what was the decision that made you realise you needed to get out of there? Because you've said that you realised you didn't belong there because there was people that were quote unquote a lot worse than you.
There was people who were there for years, people who got a kick out of being there, people who would, you know, that have a laugh and a joke about, I've been here for 3-4 years, and there was women there long enough that they'd become couples, and like it was extremely odd. But the turning point for me was I was quite bad. There was, I think I told you, there was times, it was 24 days once, didn't eat, refused, I need to get out of here, like food strike that you see in the movies, except it works in the movies. The turning point for me was stuff like, I told you about the girl, she slit her arms open, and I was walking around in the garden where they could watch us. I say the garden, it's like this, but it's just got fake grass on the floor.
Yeah.
She's in the corner, and I'm is she okay? Whatever. So I walk over, and her arms are just like, she's just like, I'm trying to grip this girl's arm, and I'm like calling for help, and that was the first point for me when it was like, what the fuck am I doing here? Like, I'm not capable of doing this to myself, and this is really strange.
Did it make you value life more?
Yeah. Like, you'll see me in the park, I'm that person, I'll take my shoes off and walk on the grass, just because it sounds really strange. It's being somewhere for that long, and you're just surrounded by bricks and floor, and I'm such like naturist, you know, I love the outdoors. I'm like, wow, like my daily walks, for instance, I try and appreciate and consume everything around me, and I'm just so thankful for it, because I've been in a place where it's all been taken away. So
isn't it interesting though, we're actually, again, I know this specific to different people, but I think as human beings, we're so far away from how we're designed to be, that actually if people that are in your position originally had actually been given more of a natural nature kind of therapeutics kind of interventions. For example, there was a nice garden, obviously all gated and stuff, so you can't just wander off like you tried to do a few times, but actually allow people to go into nature, maybe have some animals and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? I think actually it probably have a lot more of an impact than actually leaving people in a brick room with no windows that would drive the most sane person like mentally unstable. And it kind of has, for me as a very logical person, like you're trying to make these people better, but you're putting them into a situation that would force the most sane person to mentally struggle. It makes no sense to me. Like, surely you want people to kind of go back to nature, back to who they are, if that makes sense, reconnect with themselves rather than disconnect with themselves in a concrete cell. Yeah.
I'll tell the story about the ducks if you want. So the first hospital I was put in, there was a sneaky way to kind of, you get someone following you around. Now and again, you'd get the person who you'd think, I can fucking outrun you. Straight over the fence, gone. And it got to the point, I only did it a few times. It got to the point after the first couple of times, they were like, she's just down at the pond, she's feeding the ducks, pocket full of oats over this fence. And they'd just come and sit next to me in the end and say, oh, you're right, yeah, I'm just feeding the ducks. That was my escape. So when I was then transferred to this ICU, it was like, where's the ducks? Where's the wall? I can't outrun these people. I can't even get out the front door. Like, you're literally just, you're locked there. And I think when you're submitted to a place like that, I don't care who you are, it's very hard to get out. And I feel extremely blessed every day at the fact that I made that decision to say, what do I need to do to get out of here? And did my best over months and months to do it.
That's a life lesson there about making a decision. Because in life, people don't make decisions in anything.
No.
In anything. They just bob along with life. So I think, as you mentioned, a lot of people that were in there for years didn't realise they had a decision. They didn't realise they had a choice. No. They were just like, this is it. And it's that defeatist, this is your words, victim mentality.
Yeah.
And you'd got yourself into that victim mentality.
Oh, I was there. I was that little fucking victim in bedroom 10. Like, you need to make a decision to want better for yourself and to want to actually do something with your future and be able to go and feed the ducks whenever you want, in my case. And I did that.
So I think people, and this is where I talk a lot to my clients about gratitude.
Yeah.
Because people want these big things, these big goals. I'm like, just be grateful for what you've actually got, because people want happiness. Fundamentally in life, everyone wants to be happy. You talk to anyone, happiness. And you say to them, what's happiness to you? Most people haven't got a fucking clue. No. So I'm like, so you want this thing, but you don't actually know what it is. How are you ever going to be able to get it?
A lot of people want it because it's what society says we should want.
Happiness, money, success, fame. And that's what I'm saying. And look at it, and again, people, again, as a male, success is sleeping with loads of women. That makes you a successful, quote unquote, male. The worst times of my life. And again, we talk about again, self-harm. I said that's why I sort of didn't know if it manifested in any way for you like that. That for me was my self-harm. The only time I ever felt something was having sex. It's the only time I felt something. So that's why, again, I sought it because I could feel. And again, I was in control of that situation. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing for me. It's like, so people would hear my story like, oh, wow, that's amazing. Except no, like it wasn't from a good place. It's not okay. It's not good. And it's like, but society will tell you that actually that makes me a proper lad. It's like macho. It's like, no, that's
makes you a bit of a twat, to be honest.
Completely agree. I was the biggest twat. I was the hands down the biggest twat I knew.
Do you know what though? You can say you're a twat, and I can too. I'm aiming that at people who don't have something going on. You had something going on, and a lot of the time, unconsciously, we do things that help us cope with that. So I don't think you're at fault. It's just how you coped, if that makes sense.
And that's what I'm saying. And this is where you look at people that are twats.
Yeah.
There's a reason. And this is what people don't seem to understand.
Stereotypes and stigma.
You look at these people and you're like, yeah, but he's just this. Like, yeah, but why is he like that?
Yeah.
Like, because we're not born that way. Like, something has happened for them to think that is acceptable. And people aren't asking the right question. It's cause and effect. Mm-hmm. You're seeing the effect and you're judging this person on the effect, or he's this or she's that, whatever it is. Okay, well, what was the cause of that? So we're trying to get the effect. Like for you, like you're depressed. Okay, right, tablets. Okay, well, the effect is that you were depressed and not able to emotionally regulate and cope.
Yeah.
Well, what was the cause of that? Let's just go back to the cause and figure that out. But we don't do that. And I think that's in mental health. We've got it so backwards. We're trying to just look at the effect. We're working on effects. The anxiety, the depression. Oh, here's a tablet for this. You weren't fucking depressed because you lacked...
Where's it stemming from?
Yeah, you weren't depressed because you lacked a tablet in your life. Like your diet wasn't lacking in this made-up synthetic thing. Yeah. You were lacking something here. Me, I wasn't depressed because... I was depressed because I fundamentally hated myself. Why did I hate myself? And you kind of break it back down. It goes back to the three things we talk about, the three main things you believe in. We'll talk about that in a second. But that was the issue. I need to go back to the root cause and fix that, and then it manifests. So you managed to get yourself out. How long did it take you from the process of making that decision to actually getting out? And I'm talking about out as into rehab. We're going to talk about rehab as well. So from being on like the main high level to going into rehab, which is essentially the stage before complete and utter freedom, how long did it take you to get out from making that decision?
What, to get to rehab or finish as well?
To get to rehab. So from the decision, a couple of months.
Yeah.
So the turnaround was quite rapid.
It didn't feel rapid. I think, like I said, no one's perfect, and you can make a plan doesn't mean you're going to follow it straight away. There was times when I completely and utterly just... There was times I genuinely woke up and I said, like, I can't live with myself. Like, I I didn't like who I was, didn't like how I acted, didn't like the decision that I'd made. I didn't like, I've gone into depth with you what happened when I woke up in the hospital, and I feel so much guilt around that. So there was times you say in that hospital, I can't live with myself, relapse, start again. So the 2 months would have been a bit longer, but I did well for them 2 months to just, oh God, just try and not be the people around me. Because you're guilty, not guilty by association, but you are who you're surrounded with. And when you're surrounded by very ill people, and some people who are there get a kick out of being there, it's like, don't be influenced. Don't be influenced. You can have this disorder and still want to get better. So for me, it felt quite long, but
that shows real emotional strength as well, mental strength to basically fight off that urge. Because we've all been in a situation where you've been surrounded by people and you kind of get pulled in. Like for example, I don't want to drink. You go out, all your mates they're drinking, and you get pulled in by just being around all the people drinking and peer pressure. Yeah. So it wasn't necessarily peer pressure, but all the people there, they're kind of dragging you in to be like, well, I'm trying so hard every single day to get out of here. It's exhausting. It's tiring. It's quite comfortable doing that. Let's just go back to doing that. And I think it's a life lesson for everyone about like when you're trying to change, especially something that. So how old are you at this age? Were you 21?
No, I spent my 21st birthday in hospital actually.
So do you mean
20 at the time?
So let's say, for example, I'm terrible at maths. So you've literally spent near enough 10 years struggling with your mental health. Maybe slightly longer. Actually, no, from what you told me, longer than that. So 15 years. Let's say 15 years. So 15 years you struggle with your mental health. You're not going to be able to undo that overnight. No. And I think it's where people really struggle. When they're trying to create this new identity for themselves, when trying to step away from whatever that is, it doesn't necessarily have to be hitting rock bottom when it comes to trauma and mental health. They could not like the person that they are and how they've acted and how they've behaved. You can change that.
Be open to it. Be open to change. You know I'm strong on that. You don't need to be what society says or what... You don't need to be the person your partner met 5 years ago. You can still change and grow and be different.
But you will relapse in whatever capacity that is. Like you'll go back to your old default setting. Instead when you have that choice.
You'll have a time. Everyone does. That's why I'm so patient with people, because I know like, okay, we have a set plan. You're going to do this. If you use it, you'll see this result. They're going to fuck up. Be patient with it. Like, just be consistent.
And that's what I'm saying. Again, my clients have lost £100 odd. It's like at the start of the journey, I know full well you're literally undoing maybe some of these clients 50 years worth of abusing your body with food and thinking a certain way. That's not going to be undone overnight. So you get later today, just being realistic with it. Cool. Well, when you do mess up, cool. Well, let's learn from it. Let's dust ourselves off and let's go again. I think that's the key thing with you. Like you never gave up. You kept going on, and then you finally got the rewards, which then led you to rehab. Can you talk to me about why rehab was so important for you, about the integration part of it? Because I think it's really, because I didn't even know there was such thing as a rehab. But so what kind of like was that? So you went from this ward into rehab. Like why was that so important to you to kind of reintegrate?
I hadn't socialised. I wasn't good at conversating. I had no social cues. When you see really awkward people having a convo, imagine a guy sees a hot girl and he's trying to flirt and it's really awkward, like in the movies. That was me with absolutely everyone. I was just like, morning. Oh, yeah, morning.
Tea towels.
I was struggling to, like, I couldn't imagine if I was still the same person on this podcast right now. It would be so fucking awkward. So it was more for like socializing, and I think I told you I came down the next morning and, so when will you be back? What? Well, I'll just be back by the evening. What do you mean? Oh, well, there's a gym up the street, there's shops. And I looked at this lady and was like, tiny lady, looked like, I'm allowed out by myself. Yeah. Oh. And I was really scared because I hadn't had that freedom. So it was really important socially, I think, to get kind of on track with the norm, not being in a hospital, I guess.
Just throw it straight back into the deep end.
Yeah. It was so... I told you before we met, actually, with the podcast, I was so like, I can just leave? Like, it was so strange to me. First place I went was the gym anyway, so...
But I think the fact of, again, it shows what kind of person you are, is that you kind of realise, I need to go to the gym and just move your body again, associate yourself with yourself, if that makes sense, in a weird in a weird way. And this then goes back to, again, linking in what we spoke about with Dave Langsdale. People go to the gym and love the gym. People, again, there's a stereotype around that. For me, so many people use the gym to actually help them with their mental health. I don't think people realise that enough. You see people that are quote unquote obsessed with it. It's like, again, there's probably a reason behind it. There's a reason why these people are so regimented and structured with going to the gym, and it's actually probably because it's helping them regulate their mental health. They're getting rid of some of their anger. For me, the gym is my angry place. Like, I'm a very calm person, but when I'm in the gym, like, that's when I, again, let
like,
quite a lot
don't
of
fucking
the
speak
stuff.
to me, I'm lifting weights.
Don't talk to me. Again, there's a few guys who do talk to me, like Dave Langsdale's one of them, and again, we get on with him, but it's like other times, like, just let me train, don't talk to me.
Shut up, Dave.
I'm listening for music and I'm cracking on. So let's, again, this is kind of like where we're at now. So there's 3 things you believe in that I absolutely love this. And when you said this, I had to make sure I went back and took the notes on this. There's 3 things you are very, very passionate about. First one is being open to forgiveness, open to change, and open to people. So let's talk about each one of these 3 things. I think each of them by themselves is really, really important. So being open to forgiveness, can you talk to me about that? Because I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with, especially how you explain it as well.
When it comes to being open to forgiveness, for me, and it's not the same for everyone, is to move past things and to genuinely live a happy life, get on track with what you want and where you want to be. It doesn't matter who you are, you need to forgive the past, and that starts with forgiving yourself. Once you can forgive yourself for me, once I forgave myself for decisions I made from a young age, people I've upset, we've all been there. Even to this day, sometimes I'm like, damn, I really upset that person when I was 7 years old. You can forgive yourself, but you need to forgive other people too. You can't move on if... You don't need to forget.
But you're not necessarily forgiving their actions.
No.
You're forgiving them for you and you're in a peace. I think that's the difference. Like, the stuff that happened to you haven't forgiven certain people to forgive their actions. You're forgiving that person for you. So that you can just let go of that anger to move on.
You need to be able to forgive yourself and other people.
I think the forgiving yourself is also key, and this is one of the biggest things that I've had to personally battle with myself is, again, some of the decisions that I've made in my life have affected and hurt people. And again, at the time I was doing the best with the information that I had. I wasn't ever trying to go out and hurt people, but ultimately it led to people getting hurt, like emotionally hurting people. I then had to accept that and basically forgive myself for the hurt that I'd caused other people, and then also the hurt I'd caused myself.
Yeah.
Again, when it comes to stuff, when it comes to sex, I had so much shame and guilt around that and attached to that. I had to forgive myself and move through that, which a lot of people don't do, and they carry this stuff around with them, and it's like this heavy rucksack that they've got. So I'm really glad you said that about actually forgiving yourself, because again, I believe that's one of the fundamental things people struggle with, is actually forgiving themselves, and it brings such inner peace when you can forgive yourself.
I think, touching on what you said there about upsetting other people, a lot of the time, when we're not really aware of how we're feeling, we can project things onto other people, and it's not malicious, but as you grow up you realise that I might have done and said this, and it's not an excuse, but it's because I was going through something genuinely, so I'm going to forgive myself for that because I wasn't in control, and just move past it. Stop kind of dwelling on things.
Because it doesn't serve you any purpose dwelling on it.
No.
It just puts it back in the past, and again, that then causes a trigger of emotions and feelings that then cause you to go back there. So I completely agree. Second one, open to change. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I think you don't, like I said earlier about change, for me it was, okay, I've got this issue. This is the stigma around it. This is how society thinks I should act. I'd be out having a laugh and think, no, I'm meant to be depressed. I need to... You ever had that? I'll just sit here in silence. You don't need to do that. You can go out and have a laugh and live your best life just because you have this label on you. Like...
Live the best life to the ability that you've got at that moment in time.
Yeah.
So it might not be that your quote-unquote best life, but again, so my whole thing with this is, it's 100% your responsibility for how you show up each day. Now, you're not always going to feel 100%. You could feel 20%, but it's still your responsibility and choice to give 100% of that 20% that you've got. I think that's where some people struggle. That when you're struggling with depression, you're functioning on 5%, 10%.
Yeah.
But you still have a choice to do the best of what you can with that 5 to 10%, rather than just being like, well, I'm not going to bother. Yeah. And that's the difference.
You know, when we'd first met, I lived in Keyworth, I stopped coming to the gym for a bit. I fell back into that victim mentality of, oh, I've been through all of this and I'm not feeling well. And I didn't leave the house for probably 2 months, genuinely, had my own little bungalow, and I just sat there thinking, oh, I'm suffering because of this, that and the other. So that was another relapse, 2 months, like, and again, you kind of realise, okay, I actually need to work to as best as I can, even if that was getting up and taking a shower in the morning and that's all I did. Everyone has a choice to do at least one thing a day, that even if it's getting out of bed or hydrating, doesn't matter how down you're feeling or anxious. There's plenty of things that people can feel that are negative that has them thinking, oh, I'm just going to not bother. There's no point. There's always a point, and you always have a decision to do at least one thing about it.
Control the controllables.
Yeah.
And I guess, even like I said, just waking up, having a shower, making your bed, having some water, straight away, that's 3 things you can tick off. That again slowly builds up. Again, when it comes to forgiving yourself as well, my biggest thing is that people struggle because they've got such a poor relationship with themselves. And if you can just go back to keeping promises to yourself, I'm going to wake up and shower, and then you actually do wake up and shower, that's a tick. You add that into your self-belief and self-confidence bucket, and then make my bed. You say you're going to do it, you do it. Boom, add another token in. And slowly over time, you start to actually build that self-respect and that self-confidence back with yourself. Because before you say you're going to do something and then you don't do it and you feel terrible about yourself, start small and build up. So I love what you said there.
Yeah, I think sometimes, oh yeah, I need to meet my steps today. I'll go on a walk later, and you don't do it. You're going to feel like shit the next day. And yeah, like you said, just start small. You don't need to pressure yourself. Same with clients, especially very overweight clients, for instance, who don't like the gym anxiety, various different reasons. Let's start small then, all right? Just hydrate today, do this, do that, and build it up. And they're the people you see the most progression with because you show the most patience to. Yep. So
that's all they need, just someone to show belief in themselves before they believe in. You should believe in them before they believe in themselves. Love that.
Little things to other people, or little things to you, could be huge to that person.
Even just saying hello to someone.
Yeah.
Huge. Be open to people.
Yeah.
This is a really interesting one because I said, especially when going to schools and talk about young people's relationships with people, not normally great. They think that, again, as you sort of mentioned about male teachers, you kind of brushed all males as the same. I think we kind of tend to do that as well. Like, we don't like people. So talk to me about being open to people.
Yeah, I think becoming open to people is really important, especially when you're not feeling too good with your mental health. Like, being open to having a conversation, or just example with the teachers and the thing when I was younger, I could have saved so much time and just issues that happened at school by just realising I need to be open to these people because they've done nothing wrong. And just giving people the benefit of the doubt. Not everyone's the same, but being open to people, talk about it. Be open to letting people know, I'm feeling this way, this is why, I might need some help.
Or even just make people aware of it, that by itself is something so powerful. Because then people, even if you don't want to do anything, it's just saying, listen, I don't want you to do anything or say anything. I'm just letting you know that's maybe why I might come across a bit cold or a bit snappy or a bit standoffish. That's why. And I think it's really interesting there. Again, you said about just giving people the benefit of the doubt. And I think that for me is it's always, again, it can come sometimes bite me in the ass, but always see the good in people. Yeah. Because it's such a better way to live life.
You know what, though? You can probably relate to this. When you've grown up with quite a few things that, aren't necessarily nice, you become very good judgment of character. So sometimes I'm not going to get to know you because something's a bit iffy, but I'm not going to be an ass.
One of the biggest things that I've learned over the last 3 years, and again, you're aware of some of the situations, is always listening to your gut.
Oh, God.
Listen to your gut. I cannot... your intuition is normally always right. And I look back at some of the stuff that's happened in my life, I'm like, my gut was trying to tell me something here and I just didn't listen.
I thought I was just hungry.
It's this is definitely not good. So to wrap this up, it's a question I ask people, like regular guests, but I want to ask it to you as well. What advice would you give to someone right now that feels stuck and out of control with life? So not necessarily a young person, like an adult, our sort of age, like someone that's feeling stuck and out of control right now. What bit of advice would you give them?
Find the things you can control. Example from you. When you wake up, just make your bed. Go and wash your face. Go and take a shower. Take a glass of water in the morning. Little things that will genuinely make you feel like, oh, okay, I've done that. I can do more, and just keep pushing for more. Don't close yourself off and give in to this. I'm depressed, so I'm going to be depressed, or I'm anxious, so I'm going to be anxious. Just be yourself and be who you genuinely just want to be as a person, but start small.
I think it's interesting to say, like, be yourself. A lot of people, because I think you said this earlier on, and wrote a note on this. You said before you're 20, you didn't know who you were.
No.
Also, if people knew you before you're 20, they didn't really know you. And then my point to that, the reason I wrote that down was because you didn't know yourself. I think a lot of people don't know themselves. So what I say to clients is, okay, well, who do you want to be? Because you can choose who you want to be. So just write down, what kind of person do you want to be? Like, how do you want people to speak of you? Like, what would they say? Like, would they say that you're a kind person? Okay, so you want to be kind. Okay, well, how can you be kind? And what you're doing is you're basically reverse engineering it. You're creating this character, essentially, which is all we are, which playing a role. And it's a case of, for most of our life, we haven't consciously chosen the kind of person that we want to be. We've kind of just fallen into it. But you can choose who you want to be.
Yeah.
And then you then live by those values and morals. So again, I've got a thing now that I live by: do what's right, not what's easy.
Yeah.
So if I'm in a decision, right, do what's right. The easy thing's to do this. What's the right thing to do? Now, sometimes that can be hard, but that is, for me, such a moral compass, because I want to always be doing the right things. And again, being integral with my work, because I said this before to my clients. I think I might say this on another podcast. I've not always been honest with people. I always used to lie to people, but the biggest problem was I was lying to myself.
Yeah.
So myself, it's like, right, I want to be an honest person. So if I want to be an honest person, who have I got to be honest with first?
Yourself.
Myself.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's just little things like that. It's like, well, who do you want to be? And then kind of reverse engineer it. So in order for me to be this person, what does that actually mean? Does that make sense?
There's something I literally live by as well, coaching and just in general. Something people will always remember you by is not how successful you are, how much money you have, or anything like that. People will remember you by how you treat them. And that is such a powerful thing for me. It's just, be fucking nice to people. You have no idea what's going on in the back of people's minds, or once they open that front door and get home. The little kid at school who's being an ass, you don't know why he's being an ass. Like, there's genuinely reasons for everything. Just be a decent human being.
Mm-hmm. And that's what we can do. Control the controllables. You can't control how anyone else is going to show up, but you can control how you respond to that situation and how you choose to show up to those situations.
Yeah.
And again, that's my friend Paul Cope said this, like, if you fight fire with fire, you can get more fire. So you have to kind of change the dance. So if this person's acting a certain way, don't go in the same way you normally would. Kind of take a different approach, take a different route, and you probably get a different outcome, a different answer.
Yeah.
Annie, where can people find out more about you? So people want to find out more about your journey. Obviously, you still do bodybuilding and stuff. Obviously, you are a vegan. So again, people will be interested in vegan natural bodybuilder. So if people want to know more about that, where can people find out more about you?
Find me on Instagram at Coach by Annie. Happy to have a chat with whoever might want to have a chat. Yeah, I'm not a mental health coach or anything though. I'm literally just being honest, so I'm not willing to help anyone with anything like that.
Just sharing your truth. And that's what we've done today, is just literally share your truth for people. And I want to say thank you very much for being so open and honest about it as well. I know it's the first time I've actually spoken about it, so we really do appreciate it.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you too, Dan. It's been cool.